The next scream. Ethan strolled through the quiet, empty streets of Woodsboro, his footsteps echoing against the stillness. His phone buzzed, and he glanced down. It was an unknown caller. Curious, he answered.
Hello?
His voice wavered as he waited for a reply. A familiar, sinister voice purred back.
Do you like scary movies, Ethan?
Ethan's laughter was uneasy.
Very funny. Who is this?
Oh, just a friend. Someone who knows you're all alone right now.
A chill ran down his spine. He glanced around, the shadows of the street stretching longer than before.
Look, whoever this is, knock it off.
Or what?
The voice taunted, dripping with malice.
You'll run? Go ahead, run. I'll still find you.
Panic set in and he broke into a sprint, the phone slipping from his sweaty hand and clattering to the pavement. Heart pounding, he turned into an alley, desperate for any escape. But there, blocking his path, stood Ghostface, knife gleaming under the streetlight. Ethan tried to scream, but it was too late. The blade slashed through the air, and his last breath vanished in a strangled gasp. The next morning, Harper adjusted a crooked photo frame on her wall, still unpacking boxes scattered across Sidney Prescott's old house. She knew all about the history of her new home, a little too much if she was honest. But when her mum insisted they move for a fresh start, Harper tried to ignore the horror stories that lingered in every corner of Woodsboro. As she unpacked, her phone rang. She frowned at the unknown number. Reluctantly, she answered.
Hello?
Harper's voice wavered slightly. A taunting voice responded.
Good morning, Harper. Settling into Sidney's house nicely, are we?
Her stomach dropped.
Who is this?
Just someone who loves a good horror story. You must have heard the one about Ethan by now.
Harper's heart pounded.
I don't know what you're talking about.
She managed, glancing toward the windows as if expecting to see a masked figure watching her.
Oh, but you do.
The voice softened, as if savoring each word.
Don't worry. You'll find out all about it soon enough, maybe even firsthand.
The line went dead. She stood there, gripping her phone, trying to process what had just happened. In that moment, she knew the nightmare hadn't ended with Sidney. It was just beginning again, with her. Harper paced the living room, her mind racing, replaying the call over and over. It's just a prank, she tried to convince herself. Woodsboro had a reputation for rumours and twisted jokes. But the voice, that tone, it felt too real. Her mum's voice echoed from the kitchen.
Harper, everything okay? You look pale.
Forcing a smile, Harper nodded, though her pulse was still hammering.
Yeah, I heard something about a kid from school.
Her mum gave her a sympathetic look.
I know it's hard to move and adjust. Just give it some time.
She tried, focusing on organising her room, but every creak in the house made her jump. As the hours passed, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. That evening, as dusk settled, her phone rang again. She hesitated, staring at the screen. Unknown caller. Her hand shook, but she answered.
Hello, Harper.
The voice was back, smooth and dripping with menace.
Listen, I don't know who you are, but you're not scaring me.
She kept her voice steady, even as fear prickled her skin.
Oh, I think you'll be scared soon enough.
Ghostface chuckled.
You're in Sidney's old house. Do you know how many people died there?
She didn't respond, her silence filled by his heavy breathing.
I'd watch those shadows, Harper.
He continued.
They're not as empty as they look.
The line went dead, leaving Harper in an almost suffocating silence. A chill ran down her spine, her hand still clutching the phone. She took a tentative step toward the window, peering outside, scanning the darkening street. No one was there, but that didn't make her feel any safer. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A new voicemail notification. Her heart thudded as she pressed play. The voicemail started with a faint, dragging sound, as if something heavy were being pulled. Then the unmistakable sound of a knife blade scraping against something hard. And finally, Ghostface's voice.
See you soon, Harper.
The following morning, Harper walked into Woodsboro High, clutching her backpack tightly. The usual teenage chatter filled the halls, but everyone seemed on edge after Ethan's murder. Students whispered in clusters, glancing around as if Ghostface might be lurking right beside them.
Harper!
A girl's voice cut through the crowd. She turned to see Olivia, a warm, friendly face she'd met during orientation.
Hey, new girl. Crazy night, huh?
Harper nodded, managing a small smile.
Yeah, I guess. It's all pretty surreal.
Olivia sighed, glancing around.
I didn't know Ethan well, but he seemed nice. Freaky stuff like this always happens here. My mom wanted us to move after the last incident.
She shuddered, lowering her voice.
But some people just don't learn.
Another voice chimed in.
Woodsboro's basically cursed.
A tall, lanky guy joined them, grinning as he stuffed a notebook into his bag.
I'm Ben, by the way. If you want the town's dark history tour, I'm your guy.
Harper gave a half-hearted laugh, unsure whether to appreciate or be unnerved by his enthusiasm.
Nice to meet you, Ben, I think.
Oh, don't mind Ben.
Olivia said, rolling her eyes.
He's a total horror geek. Probably knows more about Ghostface than Ghostface does.
Hey.
Ben shot back, smirking.
Knowing your enemy is the first step to survival, right?
Just then, a serious-looking guy joined their circle. Short hair, intense eyes. Olivia introduced him with a warm smile.
And this is Dylan. Ignore his serious artist look. He's harmless.
Dylan gave Harper a quick nod.
Welcome to the haunted house, I guess.
He avoided eye contact, looking distant, as if something else weighed on his mind.
Thanks.
Harper said, eyeing the group. Each of them seemed friendly, but with the looming dread of Ethan's murder, she couldn't shake the feeling that one of them might know more than they were letting on. The days passed in a blur, and Woodsboro's unease grew as rumours of Ethan's death lingered in the halls. Harper tried to blend in, distracted by the whirlwind of moving and her new friends. She wasn't about to let fear ruin her fresh start. But Ghostface had other plans. One late afternoon, Olivia was waiting outside the school gym, scrolling through her phone. The halls were nearly empty, the students long gone. She thought she heard footsteps but shook it off until her phone buzzed and the screen flashed unknown caller. She chuckled, thinking it was Ben pulling a prank.
Real original, Ben.
She muttered, answering.
Hello?
Silence. Then a familiar, chilling voice cut through.
Do you think you're safe, Olivia?
Her smile faded.
Very funny. Did Ben put you up to this?
The voice chuckled.
You won't be laughing when I carve that smile off your face.
The line went dead. Olivia looked around, trying to shrug it off. But the gym doors suddenly creaked open and the faint shuffle of footsteps echoed from behind her. She spun around, heart pounding.
Ben?
Her voice shook. Out of the shadows stepped Ghostface, knife gleaming. Before Olivia could scream, he lunged forward, slashing across her shoulder. She staggered back, clutching her bleeding arm, then tried to run, but Ghostface blocked her path. A cold, manic gleam in his eye, he raised the blade again, moving in for the final strike. A scream echoed through the empty halls. The next day, news of Olivia's death tore through the school. Harper's stomach twisted as she and Ben whispered in shock, Dylan hanging back with a grim look.
Another one?
Ben whispered, barely able to mask his excitement and fear.
This is insane.
Harper nodded, her face pale. She couldn't shake the dread settling in her bones. Ghostface wasn't done. After Olivia's death, the school felt like a pressure cooker. Teachers tried to restore a sense of normalcy, but tension buzzed through every hallway. Harper, Ben, and Dylan clung together, their conversations quiet and strained. No one wanted to be alone. But Ghostface didn't care. That evening, Ben walked home, nervously glancing over his shoulder. The street was deserted, shadows stretching across the pavement in the fading light. He tried to keep calm, forcing himself to walk casually. Nothing's wrong, he thought. I'll be fine. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown caller. Ben swallowed, his fingers fumbling as he hit answer.
Hello?
Ben,
Ghostface's voice purred, dripping with menace.
I hear you're the horror expert. How much do you know about fear?
Ben's pulse quickened. He put on a brave face.
I know enough to not let some psycho scare me.
Oh?
Ghostface chuckled. sending a chill down Ben's spine.
We'll see about that.
A noise echoed from nearby. Ben's head snapped to the side, spotting a figure darting behind a tree. He turned and ran, heart racing, the weight of his backpack slamming against him with each step. He sprinted down the street, but every shadow seemed to move with him, every sound sharper. Then he stumbled. Ghostface was right behind him, knife gleaming. Before Ben could even scream, Ghostface lunged, a savage slash tearing through the air. Ben fell to the ground, clutching his side, blood spilling between his fingers.
You think you know fear?
Ghostface's voice was low, nearly a whisper.
This is only the beginning.
The next morning, Harper sat in shock as the news of Ben's murder reached the school. 2 deaths, back to back. Her stomach twisted as she looked at Dylan, who sat silently, his face unreadable. Harper's phone buzzed in her hand, a message from an unknown number. "You're next." 2 days after Ben's murder, Harper could barely sleep. She kept hearing Ghostface's voice in her head, seeing shadows move in her peripheral vision. Every sound was amplified, every stranger a potential threat. That evening, Harper sat alone in her living room, the weight of fear pressing down on her. She kept her phone close, waiting for any sign of the killer's next move. "I'm going to find out who you are," she thought, trying to muster up some bravery. Just then, the lights flickered, then went out completely. Her heart stopped. She reached for her phone, but as she unlocked it, a familiar number appeared on the screen. Unknown caller.
Hello, Harper.
The voice oozed menace. She clutched the phone, fighting to keep her voice steady.
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
Oh, don't act so innocent.
Ghostface's tone was mocking, taunting.
You wanted to know what it was like to live in Sidney's house, right? To walk in her shoes. Well, Sidney fought back. Are you brave enough to do the same?
Then the line went dead. Harper heard a faint creak upstairs. No. She forced herself to stand, her breathing shallow, and crept up the staircase. As she neared her bedroom door, she saw a shadow slip around the corner. Her heart pounded. She bolted back down the stairs, but just as she reached the front door, Ghostface appeared, blocking her path, knife gleaming in the dark. She turned and sprinted toward the kitchen, slamming the door behind her, frantically searching for anything to defend herself with. Ghostface's footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. She grabbed a knife from the drawer and braced herself, adrenaline surging. The door creaked open and he stepped inside, his mask gleaming. She didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, swinging the knife, but he dodged, laughing as he stepped back.
Is that all you've got, Harper?
Using the momentary distraction, she scrambled around him and raced out the back door, sprinting into the darkness. She didn't stop running until she was blocks away, breathless and terrified. Her mind raced as she tried to think of anyone she could trust. The following morning, exhausted and shaken, Harper sat with Dylan at the edge of the school courtyard. He studied her, concern in his eyes.
You okay, Harper?
She forced a smile, though every instinct screamed at her to stay on guard. Could it be him? Or was that exactly what Ghostface wanted her to think?
I'm fine.
She lied, glancing at the group of students nearby.
Just tired.
As she glanced at Dylan, a horrifying thought struck her, one that could lead her closer to the truth, but only if she was willing to face it head on. That night, Harper sat in her bedroom, going over everything that had happened since she moved to Woodsboro. She replayed each encounter with her friends, every strange detail she'd noticed but ignored. Her mind kept circling back to one thing: the calls. Ghostface knew too much about her schedule, her routines, even her fears. It has to be someone close, she thought, a chilling realization settling over her. Just then she remembered something Dylan had said at lunch a few days ago.
Woodsboro has a history. It's tradition.
It wasn't exactly suspicious, but the way he'd said it, like he reveled in it, it made her uneasy. She opened her phone and searched for any connections he might have to Sidney's past. If he's been here a long time, maybe he'd know more about Sidney, and about me. Scrolling through local articles, Harper's blood ran cold. She found a photo of Dylan from years ago at a Halloween event, dressed as Ghostface. It was just a costume, but the way he stood sent chills down her spine. Suddenly her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. Unknown caller. She hesitated, her hands shaking as she answered.
Hello?
Hello, Harper.
Ghostface taunted.
Still playing detective? You're in way over your head.
Why are you doing this, Dylan?
She whispered, the name slipping out before she could stop herself. Silence. Then a slow, mocking laugh.
So you figured it out. But knowing won't save you, Harper. Not tonight.
The line went dead. A cold dread settled over her. He was close, maybe already in the house. She crept downstairs, her heart racing. Just as she reached the hallway, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Dylan standing there, the ghost face mask in his hand, his expression unreadable.
You know, I was hoping you'd make it this far. Sidney was always such a survivor. Let's see if you're half as strong.
Harper's eyes narrowed, fear giving way to resolve.
You're sick, Dylan.
He slipped on the mask, voice distorted into that chilling rasp.
And you're next.
He lunged, but she dodged, sprinting up the stairs. She bolted into her room and locked the door, grabbing anything she could find to use as a weapon. She could hear him pounding on the door, taunting her from the other side. The wood began to splinter.
Think, Harper.
She told herself.
Sidney survived by fighting back.
As the door burst open, she hurled a lamp at him, catching him off guard. He stumbled and she seized the chance, running past him. But as she reached the bottom of the stairs, he grabbed her ankle, sending her crashing to the floor. Dylan towered over her, knife raised.
Any last words?
Without missing a beat, Harper kicked upward, catching him in the chest and sending him staggering back. She scrambled to her feet, grabbed the knife he'd dropped, and held it between them.
Yeah, go to hell.
With a fierce swing, she slashed at him, driving him back toward the front door. But he grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully, and managed to throw her off balance. She fell, her vision blurring as he stood over her, triumphant.
Game over, Harper.
He whispered. But Harper kicked out, catching him in the knee. He stumbled, and she seized her last chance, plunging the knife into his side. He gasped, staggering backward, clutching his wound. As he fell, the Ghostface mask slipped from his face. Harper staggered to her feet, breathless and bleeding, but alive. She looked down at Dylan, feeling a mix of horror and relief. The nightmare was finally over, at least for now.
Bloody Mary's Horror Stories. Watch, like, and subscribe.